memorial service today, but we were told by the PSA that they are planning a bigger memorial service on Thursday. So hopefully we will get an opportunity to speak to the family as well. But we did speak to some of the interns, Sakina, off record. They were very keen to speak to us in terms of some of the challenges that they are currently experiencing. Most of them, they're speaking on issues around bullying, the issues of shortages of staff, because those are some of the things that most unions, including how they have raised around that particular hospital, saying that the reason why Dr. Mazi could have been prevented from taking a day off is because the hospital is experiencing shortages around the staff members and issues around resources. And they've been saying that these are some of the issues that they've been raising with the Department of Health here in the province. And they've also questioned the issue around the NHI, Sakina, saying that if you have hospitals like Prince Mshini that are experiencing such serious challenges of staff capacity, for the resources, the infrastructure, which is also said to be falling into pieces within that hospital. So they are questioning whether government is going to be able, to implement NHI accordingly with a hospital, and not just only Prince Mshini, according to them, because they're saying that there are many other hospitals who are having similar challenges as in Prince Mshini. So they also have questioned this implementation of the NHI by government that is being proposed.
Nonjabulo Makamu, thanks so much for that update. Our reporter there was at the Prince Mshini Memorial Hospital earlier, but unfortunately media not allowed in there to that memorial service being held by the PSA. Well, that's where we have to leave it. Thank you so much, everybody. And of course, apologies there to Ondelambana. It is time for the latest news.
Thank you, Sakina. On the top stories, an Eastern Cape woman arrested in connection with the death of her baby, and a finance minister to table the budget tomorrow. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good day. Eastern Cape police have arrested a 32-year-old woman in connection with the death of her 3-year-old daughter in Mbizana. It is alleged that the suspect placed the child's body in a suitcase and transported it via a taxi from Zamba to the Mbizana police station, covering 30 kilometers, where she then reported the death. Police spokesperson Majola Nkotli says the suspect is scheduled to appear in Mbizana Magistrate Court tomorrow, facing charges of culpable homicide, child neglect, and defeating the ends of justice.
The suspect left her toddler unattended at home in Mzamba on Sunday, 18th of May, while she visited her boyfriend. Upon her return the following day, 19th of May, she claimed to have found the child unresponsive near the door. Instead of seeking immediate medical or police assistance, she allegedly concealed the body in a suitcase and traveled to Mbizana. She was subsequently arrested after presenting the suitcase at the police station.
The IEC official accused of illegally transporting voting materials without a police escort in Pietermaritzburg during last year's general elections has been acquitted by the Pietermaritzburg Magistrates Court. MK party members laid a criminal charge against Nkosinathi Mnikati, who was an IEC area manager in the Imbali area. Handing down his judgment, Magistrate Edmund Surauki said based on evidence presented by IEC Provincial Manager Bridget Masinga and other witnesses, Mnikati had the right to transport IEC material without a police escort. IEC CEO Simon Mabulo was at court for the judgment.
Well, we think that this is a dark spot on our electoral democratic experience, because we ought not to have been here. Area managers have within their scope of responsibility the removal of material. We really need not have been here in the first place. We think that they should have listened to the event organizer, which is the Electoral Commission, who have appointed these officers and giving them the responsibility to move material, because otherwise, absent the ability to move material, the electoral process will collapse at certain voting stations.
The DA says it wants Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana to provide a comprehensive spending plan when tabling the national budget for the third time tomorrow. The party says the main objectives of a spending review will help in removing excessive and overlapping government expenditure. Party MP Dr. Mark Berg explains.
We're expecting the Minister to speak to a comprehensive spending review to be conducted by this government, and the findings from that spending review to be implemented in the form of an omnibus bill that takes away areas of excessive spending and overlapping government departments that do the same work to a suboptimal standard. If we can get this right, we will create space in the fiscus, meaning the money at our disposal, to focus on the projects that we need. And while we're doing all of this, the DA is not expecting to see a cutback in frontline services such as doctors, nurses, teachers, and policemen.
Meanwhile, COSATU's parliamentary coordinator Matthew Parks says the budget should strike a balance between stimulating economic growth and shielding the poor.
What is needed now is to ensure that the budget is progressive, is decisive. It rebuilds the capacity of the state to provide the goods that society and the economy depend upon. It helps stimulate economic growth by investing in infrastructure and a ramped-up industrial financing program to help unlock strategic industries. It needs to provide a path to employment for young people by massively expanding public employment programs. It needs to give relief to the unemployed through social grants. Critics will ask, well, how do you fund this? Well, the simple solution is, besides growing the economy and removing the obstacles to it, is to give the South African Revenue Service the tools it needs to improve tax compliance from 64 to 70% over the next 3 years. That will provide an additional 120 billion rand of owed revenue to the state each year.
Medical workers in Gaza say 30 people have been killed in Israeli strikes in half an hour in Gaza. This as Israel presses ahead with its renewed offensive against Hamas. Earlier, the leaders of Britain, Canada and France condemned the military operation. The BBC's Yolanda Nell has more details.
The strongly worded statement by the UK, France and Canada marks one of their most significant criticisms of Israel's handling of the Gaza war. The countries say they've always supported Israel's right to defend itself against terrorism, but call its latest military escalation wholly disproportionate and the decision to let only a basic quantity of aid into Gaza wholly inadequate. The leaders threaten concrete actions against Israel over Gaza and targeted sanctions over its settlement expansion in the occupied West Bank.
Recapping the top story, Eastern Cape police have arrested a 32-year-old woman in connection with the death of a 3-year-old daughter in Mbizana. It's alleged that the suspect placed the child's body in a suitcase and transported it via a taxi from Zamba to the Mbizana police station. I am Wandela Mbana for SAFM News Headlines at 12:30.
Specsavers Audiology, South Africa's largest audiology group, brings you the all-new Clarity Pro rechargeable hearing aids. Experience cutting-edge features at a price you can afford. For a limited time only, buy one Clarity Pro rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. You heard right, buy one and get 50% off the second. Visit specsavers.co.za to find your nearest store and ask for Clarity Pro today. Specsavers Audiology. Test your hearing and join the conversation. T's and C's apply.
Join us this Tuesday evening at 7:30 for the latest series of SAFTA award-winning reality show, The Tastemaster SA.
Today's theme is all about bread.
I love making bread.
I am shaking my boots. What a page. We got this, we got this. Oh, that didn't sound convincing. I'm feeling a little stressed. I'm not going to mess this one up.
That's The Tastemaster SA. Tuesdays at 7:30, repeats Sundays at 4. Only on SABC2.
The Health Professions Council of South Africa, HPCSA, is calling for nominations to be considered to serve as members of the HPCSA professional boards. All practitioners actively registered with the HPCSA may be nominated. Please note that you may not nominate yourself or the application will not be considered. Deadline for submissions is the 2nd of June 2025. For more information, please visit the HPCSA website, hpcsa.co.za.
This May, SAFM celebrates Africa Month with you. As we honor the legacy of the Organization of African Unity, we bring you rich conversations and stories that shape the continent. Join us as we celebrate African pride, unity, and progress. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
I know your eyes in the morning sun. I feel you touch me in the pouring rain. And the moment that you wander far from me, I wanna feel you in my arms again. And you come to me on a summer breeze, keep me warm in your love, then you're softly, and it's me. How deep is your love? It's your love. How deep is your love? I really mean to love, 'cause we're living in a world of fools, yeah, breaking us down, yeah, when they all should let us be. We belong to you and me.
I believe in you.
Yeah.
You know the door to my very soul. You're the light in my deepest, darkest hour. You're my savior when I fall, and you may not think that I care for you when you know deep down inside I really do. You need to show how deep is your love. It's your love. How deep is your love?
I really mean to learn, 'cause we're living in a world of fools, breaking us down when they all should let us be. We belong. Break the music, come on, say it. How deep is your love? How deep is your love? I really need to learn, 'cause we're living in a world of fools, breaking us down, yeah, when they all should let us be. We belong. Come on, let's say it one more time. Y'all help us. How deep is your love? How deep is your love? I really mean to learn, 'cause we're living in a world of fools, breaking us down when they all should let us be. We belong to you and me.
It is PJ Morton coming through featuring Yeba on this one. How Deep Is Your Love? Their rendition on a classic song. I'm not sure if you're aware, by the way, that PJ Morton was actually a band member with Maroon 5. I was not aware of this. He actually joined Maroon 5 in 2010 as a touring member, and then officially joined the band in 2012, and he's been with the band ever since then. As the keyboardist for Maroon 5, a singer-songwriter in his own right, as well as a record producer, and of course coming together with Yeba on this one. How Deep Is Your Love? And that is how we kick off the show this afternoon. Much anticipations with everything that's going on the news circuit. Today, of course, the vice president is out of the country. He's engaging in business in Paris country duty. And of course, the president himself touched down in Washington yesterday. for those much anticipated talks between the two leaders. That one. And of course, President Ramaphosa. So I know a lot of us have got our ears and eyes cast on the outcomes of that particular engagement, right? And those conversations with all the respective analysts, political, economic, and otherwise, are going to continue on the other side of 3 with Ashraf. From our side, we're just going to break away from the mainstream news for a second. We're going to touch base with a conversation that's been a ongoing conversation in the country for a few years now, affecting the creative and cultural sectors. We're going to be touching base with the various stakeholders around the Copyright Amendment Bill as well as the Performers Protection Amendment Bill. And you know, when we were talking this morning with my team, we realized that even though we've all tracked this story for so many years and we're all in this space as creatives in one way or another, you know, this conversation is starting to confuse us as well, because it almost seems as though if we're talking to, you know, the music sector, if we're talking to the animation and film sector, if we're talking to the literary sector, there always seems to be nuanced angles about why people are opposed or pro the bill in its current form or why it needs to be amended. So hopefully today we can consolidate all of that thinking under one conversation and see how we move this forward. We're also going to be in conversation with the head of the Antiviral Gene Therapy Research Unit at WITS, where scientists have won big in international awards for converting cashew waste into key vaccine ingredient. Yeah, I said cashew. So we'll find out what that entails later on in the hour. And then on the other side of 2 o'clock, it's Tuesday. So we delve into all matters health and wellness. Here's a question. What if we could print new skin? I don't make this stuff up. So we're going to have that conversation after 2 o'clock. What if we could print new skin, comfortable in bio-printed skin, and what that means for the medical fraternity by way of possibilities, for instance. So that's coming up on the other side of 2. For now, let's take a quick pause and then we'll be right back. It is The Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, on SAFM.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The Red Devils want to wrap up the season with maximum points at Old Trafford.
Into the box, brilliant, absolutely fantastic. And Mason Mount strikes again. Brilliant stuff from Manchester United.
While the Villains want to conclude their good race with a victory.
Rodgers turns and sees a knee ball into it. Ollie Watkins, and he's touched it home. Ollie Watkins breaks the record. Number 75 for Watkins.
This is the bottom half versus top half Premier League clash. Catch Manchester United FC versus Aston Villa FC on Sunday 25 May at 4:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and S3. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
All right, as we get into this conversation, so tomorrow civil society organizations are going to hold a picket outside the Constitutional Court in support of the Copyright Amendment Bill and the Performers Protection Amendment Bill. And the organizations include Section 27, Recreate SA, Blind SA, the South African Guild of Actors, SAGA, the Library and Information Association of Africa, Right to Know, Wikimedia South Africa, and more. And we thought we'd catch up with some of the stakeholders in this conversation around the Copyright Amendment Bill as well as the Performers Protection Bill. Joining our conversation now is Zenit Suji, who is the head of education rights at Section 27, and Jack Devnaran, who is the chair of the South African Guild of Actors, SAGA. Good afternoon to both of you. And maybe let
Hi,
me
Bridget.
start by asking, just the status. I think is always the first question that we engage on this conversation. The status of where these bills currently are, and then we'll reverse the conversation as we go along. Jack?
Yeah, the status has finally reached a place where a firm decision can be made. South Africa has a very straightforward, if not, a very engaging process for making law, and that involves all our multi-party National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces. The Copyright Amendment Bill, together with the Performance Protection Amendment Bill, have been in that system for the last 7 years. And in fact, it went through that system twice. And that's because there is obviously a political agenda to try and subvert the aims and objectives of the bills and how they intend to reform and revise our statutory framework for how we manage copyright. So, having gone through that system twice, the bills arrived at the President's desk last year on the 29th of February. The National Assembly signed off, and it was up to the President then to sign the bills into law. Instead of doing so, he said that the constitutional concerns that he had flagged were still not satisfied by the parliamentary process, and therefore he was then going to refer the bills to the Constitutional Court, which is really his only other option. And that's why we are now absolutely delighted that we can get past the political football stage of going round and round aimlessly, having outside political interests playing a role in South African lawmaking. And now it can actually get to the Constitutional Court, where our bills can be seen against the backdrop of our constitutional rights.
Yeah. If I may ask, read that constitutional concern which was flagged by the President. What exactly did that speak to?
Well, the President mentioned things like an arbitrary deprivation of property, and he had flagged some other concerns about international treaties and the notion that the bills are not consistent with South Africa's obligations under certain international treaties. From Saga's point of view, his concerns are ill-founded and, in fact, give voice to commercial interests for the large corporate monopolies that exist in the global north. We don't believe that the President correctly applied his mind to the needs for reforming South Africa's constitutional or copyright legislation. We believe, in fact, that he was playing to certain commercial and political interests that lie outside of South Africa's borders.
Zinette Suji, to jump you into this conversation as the head of education, writes at Section 27. This has been an ongoing cycle now, as Jack has just pointed out. It's been about 7 years of this process going through the system. Which means that it's been about 7 years for, lame South Africans like myself to get confused about these bills right now. Perhaps if you could give us just a little breakdown as to the essence of both bills and what they speak to. Because I also sort of posed this, having had various conversations on the show with, people who work in different aspects of the creative sector. And there's been people and organizations that have been pushing for the bill to be signed in the form that it was at. And then, of course, there were those that were pushing for it to be amended. And so at times it almost seemed like, depending on the sector of creativity you speak to, music, animation and film, there were different or conflicting areas where even the sector wasn't seeing eye to eye.
Sure. Thank you so much, Bridget. So I think from Section 27's perspective, we act on behalf of Blind SA, and we've been invited by the Constitutional Court as an interested party, and our submissions are very much aligned, or we address sections 12A and clauses 12A to D and 19C of the Copyright Amendment Bill. And I think we come from the perspective as an education rights, from an education rights perspective, to say that these clauses are actually, or sections are actually constitutional, because what these bills are trying to do is that we need to look at it as a transformative piece of legislation post-democracy, right? The Act, when it was enacted, was a 1978 Act. It now needs to obviously be regulated under a constitutional dispensation. We now have a Bill of Rights that promotes the rights to basic education and to further education, and this is exactly what sections 12A to 12D and 19C does. And it's important for us to understand that, these particular sections, Bridget, actually provides and enhances these rights because it gives a researcher the right to conduct research. It's exceptions to when copyright would not be infringed. And the sections are not just a free for all, or that you're using it. So the purpose for when the works can be used is quite explicit. What the bill always says, it's not for a commercial, the purpose should not be for commercial use. It is to when one needs to conduct research for it, or it's for libraries to preserve the literary works or artistry or artistic works. So it's not, it also provides those kind of factors that one needs to consider when using that work. And when you read these specific sections, one would definitely be able to see that it's not removing or taking away the rights of the copyright holder. It's basically saying these are exceptional circumstances, and it is specifically it is for the purpose for education and for research, and that's where we come from.
Is it by way of, because I realize you just said that you speaking specifically to two of the clauses in the bill. So the question becomes: is it possible for bills like this to holistically consider and protect a broad spectrum of the creative, literary and film sectors as a collective? Like, is it possible? We were having this conversation with our producers to say, well, would this bill ever reach a point where the entire sector as a collective is more or less content with how they are protected and provided for within these two bills?
I think it can be. Everything in law we do as a balancing of rights. Mm-hmm. And it's as long as it's aligned with, where the balance of rights is a way that does not completely or is completely unconstitutional against one party. I think it could be brought in line, and it could be passed. And I think this is why it's before the Constitutional Court. And this is what the Constitutional Court needs to grapple with, is that are these sections that are being contested by, or that the president has an issue with, is it actually infringing on one party more, than
the other,
than the other? And it is about. So if we look at these specific sections together with the specific sections that I'm saying, that you have the right to Section 29 and Section 10 of the Constitution. And are these actually, it's not elevating one over the other, but it's looking about, you're taking it to a point where it needs to be entrenched and enhanced.
Yeah.
And I think it's about getting the balance of rights completely getting it right.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what this piece of legislation aims to do.
Okay, let's take a quick break here for the headline news. We'll come back on the other side and we'll jump in Kayla into this conversation as well, who's the project manager from Recreate SA. It's just gone 1:30. It's time for us to catch up with Ondela and the headline news.
Thank you, Bridget. On the news headlines, Eastern Cape police have arrested a 32-year-old woman in connection with the death of her 3-year-old daughter in Mbizana. It is alleged that the suspect placed the child's body in a suitcase and transported it via a taxi from Zamba to Mbizana police station. Gauteng police are investigating a case of attempted murder following a shooting incident at the Merton taxi rank south of Johannesburg this morning. And the City of Cape Town's Disaster Operations Centre says it has received reports of localized flooding in parts of the city due to the downpours over the course of the morning. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
All right, we are catching up with the various stakeholders as a follow-up on the status of course, the Copyright Amendment Bill and the Performance Protection Amendment Bill with the civil society organizations that are going to be picketing outside the Constitutional Court tomorrow in support of the Copyright Amendment Bill and the Performance Protection Amendment Bill. And there's a few stakeholders within this conversation, the likes of Section 27, Recreate SA, Blind SA, and of course the South African Guild of Actors, SAGA being one of them, and the Library and Information Association of South Africa. Joining us now is Kyla McNulty, who's the project manager at Recreate SA. And we want to jump you into this conversation as well, Kyla, and just find out your interest and your stake in this as a copyright advocacy movement.
Hi, Bridget.
Hi.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm a convener for Recreate, which, as you mentioned, is an umbrella copyright advocacy movement. I actually got involved. I've done some kind of social justice work, and then knew I was in the music industry. And I originally got involved facilitating educational workshops for musicians and creatives. And then I just got more and more involved because I had project management skills and all sorts of skills. So I've gotten involved, and I've learned. It's since 2020, and I've really been learning so much from all the different perspectives. It's really unprecedented the way it brings together so many different factions of society, people who are marginalized because of access, needing Braille, people who need access to education, actors who need royalties, musicians who need fairer regulations. So, yeah, it's really a very, very multifaceted movement, and it's been an honor to assist in organizing it.
Now, with that multifaceted sort of tier to this conversation, and I know I've hopped on, to the two other guests about this, but from your perspective, is the bill close to balancing the rights, as Zanette put it, to balancing the rights in terms of the interest of the collective, especially from a copywriting perspective?
Yeah, so the bills have been in the drafting process for a long time. So a lot of the organizations that I work with, they consider this a very personal kind of struggle because they've been participating in the legislative process for years. There's clauses in there that they've helped draft that will directly speak to the needs of their constituencies. I think, and I do want to preface by saying this because I think it will contextualize a lot of what you've been trying to understand. And that is that Recreate formed in response to misinformation being spread about copyright reform. So there was a bunch of organizations and individuals who recognized that misinformation, for example, fear-mongering around something like fair use and saying that fair use is free use.
Yeah.
And that is not what it is. That's not how it works. These organizations came together and they said, look, we need to push for these reforms because if we don't push for these reforms, industry is going to misinform the public about what reforms are in their best interest. And we're seeing this most strikingly play out in the creative industry, where you have collecting societies and, intermediaries, essentially. Intermediaries being, you got your creator of a copyright, then you've got your intermediary, which is often the distributor or the owner of the copyright, and then you've got your user, which is the person accessing the copyright. So often, because this is a apartheid legislation from 1978, our copyright laws are very much structured in favor of intermediaries. There are very little rights for users and creators. So creators, for example, don't get a fair share of their work often, and users are often not protected from regulation of markets. For example, textbooks in our country are pushed up because they'd rather sell a few textbooks to the people who can, people who have higher income, than actually make it more affordable. Something like The Long Walk to Freedom, is generally 3 times more expensive in South Africa than it is in somewhere like America or the UK. So there's this big historical issue with the way our copyright works. And it also affects research, it affects innovation, it affects so many different things. And what is happening is because industries are often the ones involved because they have the time, they have the know-how, it's in their interest, they don't really inform the public, and the government isn't doing a good enough job to inform the public that this is, the issues with the current copyright, this is why we're changing the laws.
Yeah.
This is how it will benefit the public. It's not really understood how it actually benefits. So you find industries push narratives that's in their favor because they don't actually want to change things. They don't want to be regulated.
Yeah, and I think that's been the point of concern for myself, Kyla, as we were sort of working this conversation this morning with the team, is to say we've tracked this conversation. I mean, Jack will testify. I don't know how many times we've spoken since I've been at SAFM, and I kept saying to them, but I get the sense that we've spoken to various other creative sectors where people seemed to be okay with the bill as it was. But as Kyla is saying, it's maybe the narrative that's being pushed by certain operators within certain sectors and mudding the water for their own business interest. Jack?
Yeah, it's been a strategic and very well-funded lobbying effort in order to introduce this disinformation. And Saga has been watching this unfold over the last 7 years, absolutely appalled at the kind of disinformation that's being propagated here. You've got producers who are saying, the bills are going to allow background actors to start claiming royalties. And, oh my goodness, you've got actors who will now start claiming royalties on commercials. And that is absolutely untrue. It is so disingenuous as to actually be insulting to industry professionals who've been involved in the drafting process of the bills. And I think it's worth mentioning also that the opponents to the bills are people who are not coming up with an alternative for what royalties should be or how to provide fairness. They're not providing other wording that might be helpful to them. They're simply saying there must be no regulation, which is simply absolutely and unacceptably, not workable in a country. We are so desperately in need of legislative reform and transformation that you simply can't have a 1978 act trying to regulate technology and media and literature and audiovisual productions in the age of the internet, streaming, and social media. That is simply untenable. So the position being held by opponents to the bill is simply not acceptable. It's not workable, and they had the opportunity to participate, and in fact they chose to play victim in this by saying, well, we are not participating, and you should have asked us to participate in the first place. And this is a participative democracy, Bridget. Everybody has a voice.
Absolutely. Kayla, given how fast the landscape of media has moved, right, in the 7 years, in fact, that this conversation and this bill have been up in the air, media has evolved into different elements and different tiers that were non-existent prior to this, that themselves add another layer of complication. When we think about the fact that we now have to consider what multimedia looks like against the backdrop of AI and everything else that's in conversation, social media occupies its own space, and it's obviously proven that it's not going anywhere. Is there still time to then factor in the current environment of the industry, the creative industry, and perhaps even anticipate what needs to be factored in that might be in play in the next 5 years is even too far down the line?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question in this context because one of the things, so the boroughs currently have a hybrid of something called fair use. And that's basically been the main, red herring, arguing point of those who oppose the bill. They're saying, fair use is going to mean that people can just take your stuff and use it how they want to, but that is not what fair use is. Fair use is basically a mechanism that says that, okay, there will be limitations and exceptions on strict copyright ownership in specific examples, but even beyond those specific examples, we're going to have mechanisms in place to test whether something is fair to use. So those mechanisms, for example, will not allow for piracy. It will not allow for, kind of copying of large portions, not crediting, so on and so forth. So there's all these tests to determine whether something is fair use. But what it does, because it's not a closed form of exception, there's not like a specific list, and if you make that list and you're allowed to use it, it says, well, we can't predict the future. Technology is always going to move. It's always going to shift with the times. In order to have some type of free flow of information, of innovation and so forth, we need mechanisms that aren't reliant on us doing a tedious legal process. I mean, look at us now. We're trying to reform laws from 1978. That predates the internet. Do you know what I mean? So we really need to get this passed so that we can then move on to even more kind of deeper considerations of something like AI, for example. But we need to first make these steps because this allows for us to move into the digital age. And with something like fair use, we have tested mechanisms to determine whether something is fair, but it also allows for innovation, which is critical. I mean, we use fair use on the internet. It's so ironic because a lot of these oppositions will complain about fair use, and then they use fair use in their own social media, in their own way of the way they create and disseminate content. So it's just this full round misunderstanding of what it is and how we can apply it. And once we pass the bill, it's really the first step, because then we need to look at regulations, which take years to draft, and we need to look at education and awareness, because if people don't know what the laws are, then they're not going to be able to use them, and it's not going to be able to benefit them.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for your time. They tell me we fast run out of it. But I get the feeling, once again, we'll be touching base at some point as the constitutional progress of these bills get underway. That was Zanette Sergi, Head of Education Rights at Section 27, Jack Devnaran, Chair of the SA Guild of Actors, and, of course, Kyla McNulty, Project Manager for Recreate SA, and they are a copyright advocacy movement. It's fast approaching 1:45. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back on the other side of this, and we'll catch up with Professor Patrick.
To study towards a tertiary qualification but need a flexible study schedule? Stadio Higher Education's distance learning qualifications offer just that. Our distance learning support is designed for your success. 2025 applications to Stadio's range of high-quality, affordable qualifications are now open. Distance learning qualifications are available in law, administration and management, commerce, teacher education, policing, law enforcement, humanities, and information technology. Visit stadio.ac.za and register today. Stadio, a new vision in higher education.
Being kind to each other is Ubudu.
It's always time to play on Takalani Sesame.
Chetu, do you want to play Market Day now?
Doing things together as a community can be even more fun than doing them on our own.
Amma loves it so much when we can just be ourselves and learn about our culture together.
Tune in to see what makes you special for the all-new episodes of Takalani Sesame. Weekdays at 3 p.m. on SABC2.
You are listening to Night Talk.
Taxi violence in South Africa has a long history. Why has violence and the taxi industry in South Africa become so inextricably tied?
And it's a problem that has been happening, at least since the late 80s, when the industry was deregulated. And in actual fact, I would like to just regard it as an industry that has deep historical roots in terms of the violence, dates back to the apartheid era, and also one of the things that I've recognized through my research over the years is actually what I call the state's failure to integrate the industry into the formal transport system, which continues to operate under stiff competition between taxi associations.
Dr. Siabulela Fobosi, who's a senior researcher at Fort Hare University.
Night Talk, Monday to Thursdays, 10 to midnight. You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
All right, as we have some more conversations on the show, we keep things moving around here. We are catching up with Professor Patrick Arbuthnot, who is the head of the Antiviral Gene Therapy Research Unit at WITS. Try saying that 50 million times. How are you doing this afternoon, Prof. Patrick?
Good afternoon, Bridget. I'm doing well, thank you. And how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it. All right, so you are head of the Antiviral Gene Therapy Research Unit at WITS. And please, I know it's a bunch of words that we all think we understand, but just to get some context as to the kind of research and the kind of work that you undertake with your students and your colleague in that division.
Yes, sure. But we have been working a lot on vaccine development over the past few years. Since the pandemic, we have shifted our focus from gene therapy, which is the name of our unit, to making vaccines. Because it was shown during the pandemic, and everybody knows this, that mRNA, messenger RNA, was very good at causing immunization to prevent infection with SARS-CoV-2. So that was a very important development. So the WHO and Medicines Patent Pool decided that it would be a good idea to build capacity in lower and middle income countries, of which South Africa is one of them, to make mRNA vaccines. So we have, since, I guess, 2021, been working on making vaccines to counter all sorts of infections. We started off working on SARS-CoV-2, but obviously the pandemic has died down now, and it's not a priority. So we have shifted our focus to making vaccines against TB, against HIV, hepatitis B virus, and one or two other pathogens as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, the work that you're doing, obviously responsive to domestic and global needs, and a lot of it quite innovative. It's so much so that you guys have actually received not one, but one of 6 International Innovation Awards.
Yes, that was a very nice award that we received. It was for work we've been doing on making a new kind of delivery method for getting mRNA into cells so that they can work as vaccines. So mRNA is a very big molecule. It's also highly negatively charged, which means that if you inject it naked into a human, it will be degraded very quickly without having any effect whatsoever. So it's crucial to have a carrier, what we call a vector, to get the mRNA into a cell so that it can be expressed and produce the antigen that will cause the immune response to SARS-CoV-2 or whatever it might be. And what we've done in collaboration with a group of synthetic organic chemists, also from WITS, headed by Charles de Koning, is to take a biorenewable resource that's abundant in Africa, and that's the shells from cashew nuts, and extract the oil from that and process the oil through various techniques, and then modify the purified fats from the cashew nut shell liquid and use those to deliver the messenger RNA. And it's working very well. It compares quite favorably with the licensed product from the big pharmaceutical companies. And I think this is quite an important development because the the compounds that we make are a fraction of the price of what you can get commercially from the big manufacturers. It's about a tenth of the price.
Mm.
And also, it's environmentally friendly, unlike the compounds that are produced in, say, Moderna and Pfizer BioNTech vaccines, which are made from petroleum resources, which is not environmentally friendly. So, so this is very useful, especially for LMICs. And one other thing is that we've patented this technology, so we have the freedom to operate or to enable these vaccines to be made without the restrictions of using other people's compounds for the vaccines.
Mm. I mean, it sounds fascinating. The fact that cashew shells could find their way into some kind of scientific medical format that goes on to be of great use to Africans across the continent. I won't even begin to pretend like I know what it looks like in its workings, and I'm sure even if you spent the whole day trying to explain it to me, I still wouldn't get it. But this breakthrough comes in really handy for the entire continent, not just for South Africa, because it speaks to supporting part of the AU, the AU's target of producing 60% of the continent's vaccines.
Mm. Yes, it is an important development, and this award that we've got from the German government and the European Union, administered by GIZ, the Overseas Development Agency, is really to upscale the production of these compounds that can be used in the vaccines. So we have been doing it at a small lab scale, just making a gram or two of these compounds and testing them in small scale. But this award enables us now to go to, several kilograms, which is an important step before we use these fats, these lipids for vaccine use in humans. So it's a very important stage of the progress of the project.
Mm. And in fact, when you get this correct and manage to upscale, for lack of a better word, would you be on track then to reaching that 60% target mark? Because currently,
Definitely.
right, Africa only produces only 1% of the vaccines that we use.
Yes, it's only 1%. You're right, Bridget. This will help us to, we have got our sights set firmly on that goal that, we should be producing 60% of the medicines in Africa. And this will certainly go a long way for the vaccine manufacture. It's a very important development.
Yeah. What does this mean for, your team at WITS, obviously, being at the forefront of this groundbreaking, innovative technologies?
It means a lot to us. I must say we have a lot of fun in the laboratory because it's a very exciting, interesting project, and everybody's very enthusiastic about working on it. It's an ideal project to train young scientists, and of course that's a very important component of this capacity development and making vaccines in Africa as well. So there are a lot of students who are involved who are really enjoying working on this. They're going to get their postgraduate degrees, MScs, PhDs from working on this, and they'll be trained, and it will build capacity. So it means a lot for us as a laboratory. But obviously it's got broader implications for building capacity in South Africa and beyond, and other parts of Africa too.
Mm. And someone just wanted to know from you, Prof. Patrick, for us laymen, why cashews versus another nutshell, for instance?
That's a very good question, Bridget. The interesting thing about cashew nuts and the shells is that the oil that is in the shells has only got a few fats, few different molecules in the oil that you can extract from the shells. That's unlike, say, sunflower oil or peanut oil or whatever it is that you may be more familiar with, or olive oil, which have got a whole lot of different fats or lipids that make up that oil. So it's quite a complicated process to separate one compound from, say, sunflower oil. But with cashew nut shell oil, it's easy to treat it in certain ways and end up with a pure fat, a pure lipid that you can then use to make the molecule that's needed to deliver the messenger RNA. So that's what it boils down to. So cashew nut shell liquid is very unusual, and it's got a simple composition, not too many lipids, not too many fats, and you can get a pure compound very easily, not such complicated chemistries involved with getting a pure compound. So that's the big advantage why we like to work with cashew nut shell liquid.
Very interesting indeed. Prof. Patrick, we appreciate the time with you this afternoon. That was Prof. Patrick Arbuthnot, head of the Antiviral Gene Therapy Research Unit at WITS in the School of Chemistry. And they've received one of 6 International Innovation Awards, of course, and secured that 7 million rand grant to develop this vaccine that enables compounds derived from cashew nut shells to be able to be produced. Interesting times we live in. Scientific innovation, I tell you. On the other side of 2, we're continuing along these themes. And we're going to be unpacking yet another innovative move. What if you could print new skin? Comfortable in bio-printed skin. I don't make this stuff up. So we'll come back and we'll have that conversation on the other side of 2. We'll find out exactly what that means. And the implications of that and how that will revolutionize certain elements of science and medicine. I'm sure it's going to be a fascinating conversation. That's coming up on the other side of 2. It's Tuesday, by the way, so because we do health and wellness on the other side of 2, and that is part of the conversation today. So you definitely don't want to miss that. And if you do have any questions or points of clarity, you can always feel free to also send us a WhatsApp message during the conversation with our guests, or you can call us and we'll give you a shout right back. You know those numbers in order for you to be in contact with us. 086 000 2032 is our call number, and 061 410 4107 is our WhatsApp number. It is the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga on SAFM, where, of course, we have the conversations that continue to lead the nation. Let us take a quick pause, and then we'll come back on the other side and get ready for the news.
This May, SAFM celebrates Africa Month with you as we honor the legacy of the Organization of African Unity. We bring you rich conversations and stories that shape the continent. Join us as we celebrate African pride, unity, and progress. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365, Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
Top stories add to a call for thorough investigation on the death of an Eastern Cape 3-year-old, and World Health Assembly adopts historic pandemic agreement. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good day. Eastern Cape Social Development MEC Bukiwe Fanta has called for a thorough investigation after the death of a 3-year-old girl in Mbizana. A 32-year-old woman has been arrested in connection with her daughter's death. Police say the woman left her toddler unattended at home in Mzamba on Sunday while she visited her boyfriend. Upon her return the following day, she claimed to have found the child unresponsive. It's alleged that the suspect placed the child's body in a suitcase and transported it via a taxi from Mzamba to Mbizana police station, where she reported the death. The department spokesperson, Mpumzi Zuzile, says they are shocked about the incident.
It is devastating to learn that this tragedy may have been preventable. Our hearts go out to the family and all those impacted by this tragedy. MEC emphasized that the well-being of children must always be a priority. The MEC called for a thorough investigation into the circumstances surrounding the child's death and urged relevant authorities to take all necessary action to support families facing difficulties.
Gauteng police are investigating a case of attempted murder following a shooting incident at the Merton taxi rank south of Johannesburg this morning. According to reports, a shootout ensued between members from two security companies, resulting in one person being wounded. Gauteng police spokesperson Dimakadzo Nebuhuli says the exact cause of the incident is still unknown at this stage.
The reports that one scholar was shot are not true, since the police went to the school and verified that no scholar was injured during the shooting. Police investigations continue, and the public is urged to report any criminal activities on the Subcrime Stop line.
The ACDP says it is hoping for a revised budget which will be pro-economic growth for 2025-26 financial year. This is Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana preparing his third attempt at tabling the budget tomorrow. ACDP Chief Whip Steve Swart says they expect more increases on the so-called sin taxes such as alcohol and cigarettes. The City of Cape Town's Disaster Operations Centre says it has received reports of localized flooding in parts of the city due to the downpours over the course of the morning. Disaster Risk Management spokesperson Charlotte Powell says roadways have been affected. She says the current forecast is expected to remain in place for most of today, with the rain abating later this evening.
Teams are attending to service requests received by the Disaster Operations Centre. No major impacts have been recorded thus far. We remind the public to please remain vigilant, particularly on the roads, and to report any weather-related emergencies to the city's Public Emergency Communication Centre on 021 480 7700.
The World Health Organization has adopted a major agreement on how to handle future pandemics after more than 3 years of talks. The negotiations were a response to the global fallout from COVID-19. The BBC's Kliza Sala reports.
Delegates at the WHO's annual assembly welcomed the resolution with applause, with the head of the organization hailing this as a historic day. Once ratified, the agreement will help better coordinate the response to future health crises, improving access to vaccines and prevention. While no countries voted against it, 11 abstained, including Poland, Israel, Italy, Russia, Slovakia and Iran. The US withdrew from the talks following Donald Trump's decision to leave the WHO.
Recapping the top story, Eastern Cape Social Development MEC Bukiwe Fanta has called for a thorough investigation after the death of a 3-year-old girl in Mbizana. A 32-year-old woman has been arrested in connection with her daughter's death. I am on Delambana for SFM News headlines at 2:30.
Marawai,
Why did you think a plastic bag and tape was a solid window replacement after that smash and grab? And why does it sound like a kite every time you hit Puma 60Ks? Mara, why? Why aren't you insured with Santam, the insurer that covers theft or attempted hijacking? Get your car covered online in just 2 minutes or SMS cover to 36101. Santam. This is freedom. T's and C's apply. Santam is an authorized FSP, a licensed non-life insurer and controlling company for its group companies.
This May, SAFM celebrates Africa Month with you as we honor the legacy of the Organization of African Unity. We bring you rich conversations and the vibrant sounds of Africa. Music that moves the soul. This is SAFM. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
okay.
People think a jazz musician, they pigeonhole us as like
Just jazz musician.
How much of that do you think is like musicians' fault? Like cats started playing for other musicians and trying to be this one thing, just trying to be Charlie Parker or just trying to, you know what I mean?
Right. People are just so brainwashed and they don't know. I don't think people know what's good and what's not good anymore. Anything popular, even if it's whack.
It is the extended version, Robert Glasper featuring Ladisi on this one with Be All Right. He hasn't been in the country in a while, Robert Glasper. I think last time he was here, there was some kind of scandal that happened. If I remember correctly, I'm not too sure. But I do remember that he came in with people loving him and, thinking favorably of him. And then by the time he exited, people were like, just go. Because, South Africans can be like that. It's gone 2:10 on our clock on the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, as we continue the show. On the other side of 2, as you know, every single Tuesday, we look at health and wellness matters. And today, we are exploring what and if we could print new skin. What would that mean? What kind of technology is going into this? What does this mean from a medical and scientific perspective? What does this change, right, for just the practice of medicine and the diagnosis of certain maybe skin-related diseases and things of that sort? So we thought we'd rope in Dr. Allison. Dr. Allison, is it Rydell?
No, it's not Dr. Allison. It's Hafiza Parker from the University of Pretoria.
My apologies, Hafiza. My apologies. And they did actually whisper to me that we've had a last-minute change of guests. This is entirely on me. Thank you so much for joining us. Hafiza Parker is a PhD candidate and lecturer at the University of Pretoria's Pharmacology,
yes.
In the Faculty of Health Science. Okay, pharmacology. Explain to me.
Okay, so pharmacology is basically everything involving medication and, treating medication, going around disease modeling, and so we look at what medications treat, what diseases and how we can improve upon them, and what we can do, to improve healthcare as a whole.
Okay. Very interesting. Right. So let's get into this conversation, right? We know that when we look at, say, for instance, the other day we were talking around burns. So we know that wound healing is often termed an overlooked burden and a silent epidemic. The financial constraints of it all and the strain of it all on the healthcare system, and the unquantifiable human cost, obviously. So when we ask the question, what if we could print new skin? What does that mean by way of, firstly, what if we could print new skin and the cause and effect it would have on the healthcare sector?
Okay, so I'm going to break that up into 2 sections. So people don't often plan for wounds, but we know that they can happen to anyone. So it can be after surgery, accidents, or trauma. So for a diabetic patient, it's simply bumping the toe and then you have a wound. So yes, patients with wounds are often seen as recovering and not truly ill. So in reality, these wounds become chronic and can cause severe infections and even lead to death. Now, I like what you said about a silent epidemic, because we've been saying this, because wounds can affect millions of people, especially the elderly and those who are immunocompromised, such as people with diabetes. But this often gets little attention. So some wounds, especially those that heal by secondary intention, are too deep to stitch. So we don't use sutures, and they must heal slowly from the bottom up. And they are a lot harder to treat and can often take months to heal. Making recovery, I think, physically and emotionally challenging for patients. And then I think your second question was on the bioprinting.
Yes, I'm very intrigued about, printing new skin.
Yes, so that is, well, I wouldn't say we are printing new skin, we are printing the scaffold for skin, and eventually I hope that we do get there. So let me just elaborate a little bit on 3D bioprinting for artificial skin. So this works by using a special printer called a bioprinter. Now this bioprinter lays down layers of living cells and biomaterials such as collagen and hydrogels, almost like printing in ink, to build up the skin layer by layer, and this allows us to create skin that closely mimics the structure of real human skin. So So now we know that normal wounds or big wounds are usually treated with skin grafts.
Yeah.
So unlike traditional skin grafts, which usually require healthy skin to be taken from one part of the patient's body, which actually introduces another wound, bioprinting doesn't rely on donor skin. And it can be tailored to the wound's exact size, shape, and depth. And this, I think, holds promise for reducing scarring and speeding up healing, especially in these large, severe burn wounds and chronic wounds that we see, and that are an overlooked burden.
Very interesting. Okay, because I was going to ask you, how different is this from skin grafting, for instance? Wow. So we're not printing new skin per se.
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. From a sort of a costing perspective or an efficacy perspective as well, how efficient is this method, and how cost effective is it for both the healthcare center and, of course, those who often seek treatment for burn wounds or any kind of other skin required treatment?
Okay, so how costly is it? So I think, at first adopting any new technology in public health care comes with high capital costs.
Yeah.
Because we'd have to buy specialized equipment, we'd have to set up clean and sterile environments, and also we'd have to train healthcare professionals to use this technology properly. But these are upfront investments that could pay off many times over. And because of the silent, epidemics that we are facing with wounds, accelerating healing and reducing these complications can significantly cut long-term treatment costs and reduce hospital stays. And I think beyond the financial benefits, what's more important is faster and more effective healing that can improve the patient's psychosocial well-being and boost their confidence, reduce emotional distress, and enhance their quality of life.
I don't know if we got this from your previous answer for us. The decellularized, is it acellular?
Acellular dermal scaffolds.
Yes.
Okay, so that is what we are actually printing. So we are printing an acellular dermal scaffold. Okay, so usually acellular dermal scaffolds are made from donated skin that's been cleaned or decellularized of all cells. Now, cells are usually the culprit. They are the culprits that cause tissue rejection. So what we want is just the natural support structure of the skin. So they act like a framework that helps the body to grow new and healthy tissue. And this is especially exciting in wound care because they reduce rejection, speed up healing, and actually work really well for complex wounds such as burns and ulcers.
So now you are able to create those, right? The ADS with this new bioprinted skin technology.
Yes, we are, and I think this is coming off of a very long journey which started, during my PhD in regenerative medicine within the Department of Pharmacology at the University of Pretoria. So we developed an acellular dermal scaffold as a replacement for skin transplants. Now, like I said, this is basically all the components of the skin without the cells. We then tested this acellular dermal scaffold in an animal model, and we saw really good results. So we thought, instead of going through the whole process of removing the cells or decellularizing the skin, we could use this new cutting-edge emerging technology called bioprinting to print the scaffold from scratch. And this is where the Department of Anatomy came in, and Dr. Adele, who is my collaborator.
Yeah.
So she came in from the Department of Anatomy at the University of Pretoria, and she and I decided to collaborate, and we came up with this new, exciting transdisciplinary project, where we used micro CT scanning to scan the existing scaffold so that we can ensure that it is anatomically correct. We then used modeling software to create a printable model, which is basically a blueprint that tells the printer what to do. And when we started simply with just a proof of concept by using a simple collagen bioink, which we mixed with fibroblast skin cells, to print the model, and we then evaluated it for its ability to support growth. This is now in vitro, so still in the lab, with great success. So we saw that, this model that we bioprinted is able to support cellular growth after 3 days. And the skin or the cells within the scaffold are actually still viable and happy and healthy.
I mean, fascinating stuff. Let's take a quick pause, and then we'll come back on the other side and try to still understand, as best as we can, all of this innovative technology that's been utilized in this process. It's just gone 20 past 2 o'clock on the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, on SAFM.
TUT ladies are on a humongous mission to play their hearts out. But Masandawana ladies believe they are unstoppable. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Do not miss out on the glittering action of Mzansi's women's football. TUT Ladies FC versus Mamelodi Sundowns Ladies FC on Sunday 25 May at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC One and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
We don't always talk on good news days. Today is one of those days which is not good news because of the 1 percentage point increase. Explain how you got there.
We had 17.1 million people who were employed. Now that number went down by 291,000. We are now sitting at 16.8 million people that are employed. And then the unemployed who are actively looking for employment in the fourth quarter, that is ending December, were 8 million. They have gone up by 237,000 to 8.2 million. So now that the number of the employed has gone down and the number of the unemployed has gone up, we end up with the unemployment rate increasing.
Masinga Maluleke, the Statistician General.
You're listening to the National Pulse. Missed it? Find the podcast at safm.co.za. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga.
So we are talking to PhD candidate and a lecturer from the University of Pretoria's pharmacology and their faculty in the health sciences, trying to understand this new revolutionary technique that they've developed. And I wanted to ask you around, I'm trying to understand the visualization of what perhaps the skin technology might look like. This printed skin technology might look like. And you mentioned that you've obviously done some animal testing on it already. Firstly, are you almost ready for the human testing element? And if so, has it been done? And what were some of the results? And what it might actually look like?
You mean like physically look like?
Like physically.
With the human eye? So it looks like a little sponge. I don't know how else to describe it. It's a little sponge, and it looks like a little...
Like a little gauzy sponge.
It's not really gauzy. I think it's a little bit tougher than, gauze because it's actual, derives from actual skin. So to answer your I think you asked me 3 questions now. Answer the first one.
And then I asked if, because you've done animal testing, if you are ready to now do human skin testing, and if so, what have some of the results been there?
All right. So just to clarify, we've done the animal testing on the acellular dermal scaffold, so the ADS that we developed in my PhD, and the animal model was part of that.
Okay.
So and we then, that was the basis that we used. So we basically implanted this acellular dermal scaffold and made sure that it works in an animal model. And from there, this is a different, type of project, because we're now introducing a new technology to create these scaffolds using the bioprinting. So the acellular dermal scaffold worked on its own with great success in animal models. So that should, I think, barring funding and all of those, we'll be ready to go to human testing. But the bioprinted, as part of it must still, it still has to undergo animal testing. So we still have to take the bioprinted scaffold to animal testing first.
I see. Okay. So we're still a little ways away from seeing the technology being in real-time use in hospitals and clinics.
Yes. Yes. So optimistically.
Yeah.
And I think all scientists like to think optimistically. And I think, here at the University of Pretoria, we want to do translational medicine. So we want to make sure that our research, gets from benchside, where we are testing it, to bedside, to actually helping patients. So optimistically, we are working towards a 10-year plan to bring this 3D bioprinted skin, let's say 5 to 10 years, if I'm being very, very optimistic, skin to South African hospitals. But it depends, obviously, on funding and support from both doctors, and then also the buy-in from the public.
Yeah.
Our prototype is still in early testing, but we've made, really exciting progress, and we've partnered with global leaders such as Cell Inc., who create and supply bioprinters. And we were actually invited to their headquarters in Sweden to train on their machines. And I think with the right backing, this could transform healthcare for patients with chronic or severe wounds, and not just by speeding up healing, but also restoring the patient's dignity and by improving quality of life.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds fascinating. Way too scientific, and sort of futuristic for my simple mind to understand. But I definitely see the potential in it, absolutely. Well, we wish you the best of luck, and hopefully all the necessary research funding comes through, and we're able to expedite this idea and scale it up and see what it evolves into and how it can significantly impact, the South African healthcare sector. Also, given just what we deal with by way of physical wounds, especially with younger children. We just had the show last week around just the treating of young children with burn and chemical wounds in South Africa.
Wow.
The data is overwhelming. So your technology will come in very handy.
Yes, we really, really hope so. And thank you so much for the well wishes and for the opportunity to speak to you guys today about the exciting research that we are doing here at the University of Pretoria.
Always doing amazing stuff at the University of Pretoria. Hafiza Parker, we appreciate the time with you this afternoon. They really do, right? I think anyone who listens to the show, we've become sort of awakened to the innovation that's happening at the University of Pretoria. I was saying to my tech producer in studio that I don't know if the university is vying to be the #1 scientific and technology institution on the continent, but they are. It doesn't matter which department at the University of Pretoria you tap into, they are doing some groundbreaking stuff over there. It's fast approaching 2:30. Andela standing by with the headline news, and then on the other side of that, we're going to bring you our kids programming with Kids Corner.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Thank you, Bridget. On the news headlines, the Gauteng Department of Education says the arrest of 7 girls accused of assaulting a girl learner from Bedford View High School should serve as a deterrent to other bullies. Eastern Cape Social Development MEC Bukiwe Fenta has called for a thorough investigation after the death of a 3-year-old girl in Mbizana. A 32-year-old woman has been arrested in connection with her daughter's death. And the UN's humanitarian chief, Tom Fletcher, has told the BBC that 14,000 babies in Gaza could die within the next 2 days unless aid can reach them. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
This program is brought to you by SABC Education, enriching minds, enriching lives.
Hi everybody, my name is Kate and today I'm going to be talking about staying organized. So it is very important to have a to-do list to stay organized. And to-do lists are basically just lists of things that you need to do throughout the week or even just throughout the day. And you can have a to-do list on your phone, on a whiteboard, on paper. It can really be put anywhere and it just helps you stay organized and not feel like everything is crumbling apart and that everything's a mess, especially when it's exams and writing tests, and as you go up grades, it's very important to stay organized so that even though you have a very high workload, you can still kind of feel like you know what to do and when to do it and not just like everything's a mess. And just ticking things off your to-do list is a very nice feeling, and it helps you like continue and do more things, because just the like good feeling of ticking it off is just amazing. And when you have nothing left, then you can relax and start your next to-do list, and it's just a very good habit. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
Hello, beautiful people of Mzansi. My name is Lubanzi Shungwane. Yes, I do know what a to-do list is. And a to-do list is basically where you write all of your duties or responsibilities that you have to do for a specific day. And as you complete these tasks, you just tick them off. And I personally do not have a to-do list. My to-do list is my brain. I have never really liked taking things down, because at school we're provided with like a diary to write all your homework and all of that, and it's empty. Like, I really do not use it. I've never been prone to writing my tasks down. I think I've just always had it in my brain. Like, I don't have to write anything down to remember that I have to do that thing. I don't know, it just comes naturally. But I will definitely say achieving those tasks and completing them is like, I do not know how to explain the feeling, but it is an amazing feeling. I think having a to-do list for other people helps them a lot, because it does help them keep track of things, and it also makes their life more organized, knowing that they don't have too many things on their plate and they're at least complete with some tasks that they have to do. If I had to do a fun to-do list for the weekend, I think it would obviously first start with my chores, like when I wake up in the morning, so that I can get all of those done, so that I can have like the rest of the day to like myself to do whatever.
Good day, my name is Monet Angel Nangolbera and I live in Limpopo. Yes, I do know what a to-do list is. It is a list of tasks that you need to complete, or things that help you stay organized and focused. Yes, I do have a to-do list for school and chores, and what's usually in it is like the homeworks for school and what I need to do the next day and if there's an event. And for chores, it's basically like washing the dishes, cleaning the house, doing my washing. How it feels when I finish doing something and get it off my checklist, it feels like I just achieved something, like a goal or something that's very great because sometimes it is very hard for me to finish something that's on my to-do list. And why I do think having one can help you stay on track is that if you have any important things that are going to come up, you already know that you have already completed your to-do list. And if I could make a fun to-do list on my weekend or for my weekend, there would be a task where I have to play with my friends, watch a movie, read a book, or try something new. Thank you and have a lovely day.
Good day, everyone. My name is Randam Zobe. I am 11 years old. Yes, I do know what is a to-do list. If I can explain it in my own words, I would say a list of things you wanna do or a list of chores that you have to do. No, I don't have a to-do list for school, chores, or any fun activities yet. How does it feel when you finish something and get to check it off to your do list? It feels very exciting because if it's chores, you'll be happy that you're almost done with your chores, especially if you have your plannings. I think having a to-do list can be helpful to stay on track during the day because you won't forget to do some chores and some fun activities. If I could make a fun to-do list for my weekend, it would be going somewhere, for example, going for swimming, eat food, prepare money. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Hello, friends, and happy Tuesday. Today, let's talk about something simple but super helpful, a to-do list. Have you ever heard of a to-do list? A to-do list is a list where you write down the things you need or want to do. You can use it for your schoolwork, chores, or even for fun activities, anything you don't want to forget. You can write down things like clean your room, finish your homework, pack your lunch, draw or color, play outside, read your favorite storybook. Now, do you have your own to-do list? What's usually on it? One of the best parts about a to-do list is the feeling you get when you finish something and get to check it off. It makes you feel proud and happy because you know you've done something important or fun. So why is having a to-do list helpful? Well, it helps you remember things, it keeps your day organized, it helps you feel calm because you know what to do next, it shows you how much you've already accomplished. And guess what? To-do lists don't have to be boring. They can be fun too. You can decorate yours with stickers, colors, or drawings. If you were to make a fun to-do list for your weekend, what would you put on it? Maybe sleep in, bake with your family, play a game, go to the park, watch your favorite movie. No matter what's on your list, remember, it's your little plan for the day. And every time you tick something off, it's like giving yourself a high five. So friends, why don't you try making your own to-do list today? It might just help you stay on track and enjoy even more. Until next time, stay organized, stay awesome, and don't forget to check things off. Bye for now.
This program was brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives.
From the shows that bring us laughter to the moments that inspire us, your SABC TV license makes it all possible. Every license paid supports local stories, top talent, and the programs that unite South Africa. Pay your TV license today. Visit tvlic.co.za or your nearest retail outlet. Hashtag your screen, your story. Together, we make it happen.
The Red Devils want to wrap up the season with maximum points at Old Trafford.
Into the box, brilliant, absolutely fantastic. And Mason Mount strikes again. Brilliant stuff from Manchester United.
While the Villains want to conclude their good race with a victory.
Rodgers turns and sees the knee ball into an Ollie Watkins, and he's touched it home. Ollie Watkins breaks the record. Number 75 for Watkins.
This is the bottom half versus top half Premier League clash. Catch Manchester United FC versus Aston Villa FC on Sunday 25 May at 4:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and S3. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365, Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
Are we still in Africa Month? Yes, we still are. We still are in Africa Month. So we thought we'd catch up with Dr. Treve Nicholas. And we asked the question, who is Nongqawuse? Author of In Search of Nongqawuse. Today is going to be a bit of a history lesson for all of us. How are you doing this afternoon, Dr. Treve?
Good afternoon, Bridget, and thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for coming through. Thank you for coming through. We appreciate it. Yes, that's the big question.
Yes, well, it's a big question. Well, I thought everybody in South Africa would know, but to my surprise, it's news to many people, and what they do know is often distorted or doesn't bear much resemblance to the truth. We need to turn the clocks back to 1856. We need to go down to the Wild Coast to a place called the Maha River. And this young lady of age 15 went down to the river and she had some visions from the ancestors that told her that the people in the area had to sacrifice their cattle, they had to destroy their maize crops, and they had to give up witchcraft. In return for which, the ancestors would return, they would replenish the lost cattle, and they would drive the Europeans into the sea. Now, all this seems a bit far-fetched, but in 1856, it was quite credible. But unfortunately, the prophetess's assertions did not come true. And unfortunately, as a result, 40,000 Amankosa perished, 150,000 were displaced, and 400,000 cattle were sacrificed. So in a nutshell, it's a story about a teenage girl who was trying to save her nation, but circumstances were working against her.
I mean, let's wind back to that time, right? 1856, you say. Let's reflect on that time, the geography of the day in which Nongqawuse lived in, and I guess how does a 15-year-old become this spiritual figurehead within her people?
Bridget, I think you're absolutely right. I say to anybody who wants to understand this, bear with me, I tell them to take off their 21st century head, put it to one side, and put on a 19th century head, if you're going to stand any chance of beginning to understand what seems unfathomable to us today. So we need to go down to the Eastern Cape, near the Kai River, to a place called Molocha. And we need to remember that by 1856, Amankosa had been engaged in 8 frontier wars with the colonialists. They were suffering from cattle disease, they were suffering from crop disease, their chiefs were grossly undermined, and it was a hugely stressed society. Much of their land had been taken from them. And at that time, they were also under the influence of other prophets who had been speaking to them over the previous 35 years, talking about the need to make sacrifices for a better or new future. So what Nongnausi suggested was not new to the Amakosa, and indeed they were under such stress. I believe that the Amakosa had lost hope and were looking for radical solutions. And Nongnausi, with her uncle Mhlakaza and King Sahili, provided radical solutions or offered radical solutions, which the majority of people believed and went with.
Now, the other interesting part is, I mean, I'm not of Amakosa descent, but I've heard this name before, right? And sort of this story being told. But I'm also, every time I try to understand, where were her parents? Or who were her parents in the context of her background as well? Very little is known about her parents, I think.
Bridget, thank you very much for asking that question, because in my book, I actually say I don't think the young prophetess was responsible. We need to remember that she was a 15-year-old girl who was orphaned. Her parents had probably been killed in one of the earlier frontier wars. She was being brought up by her uncle, Mhlakaza, and she was seen as a seer. She was a young girl, and messages often came through young women, as you're probably aware. I fear that she was possibly manipulated or used by people who wanted to further messages that they believed in. So, you've asked the question, and that's exactly what I say in the book. Perhaps why wasn't the uncle offering some further guidance? Perhaps the King Sahili should have been wiser, but then he was under huge pressure himself. Or you could even say that the colonialist, the Cape Governor and his magistrates should have done more to try and stop the events. Their interference, they were pretty low key. If they had helped people that had doubt, I suspect that the cattle killing movement might have been curtailed or stopped in its tracks, but they did very little to help people that were so-called unbelievers, and so the movement really took off, grew, and reached epidemic proportions.
It must have been fascinating for yourself as you embarked on the research for the book. And what was it about this particular story that piqued your interest?
Well, I was writing my first book about my time working in Transkei in 1980, a book called A Nun and the Pig. And I thought to write that, I better do some research on Amakosa history. And I came across this incredible story of Nongnausi. I couldn't believe it. I felt like I discovered a Shakespearean story, like I don't know, a Macbeth or Hamlet. I mean, it was just huge and visceral and unfortunately bloody. The second thing is I was cross and I felt deceived. Why I'd never heard the story before. I worked in the Eastern Cape. I'd been on holiday to South Africa many times, yet I'd never heard it. And then the third element is when I read it, I felt a great sense of injustice. I simply didn't believe that the narrative, which was this was caused by a 15-year-old girl. And so that spurred me into going off and literally trying to find the sites where Nongnausi had the visions. I wanted to explore what ancestors really meant to Amakosa. And I wanted to go and find her grave, find where her resting place was, so I could build a fuller picture of her life. You could ask, why on earth did that fascinate me? I can't really put a finger on it. I think it was those factors that was... In fact, what I thought was, this is a story the world should know. I realized quickly that a number of South Africans didn't know the story. And in some regards, I could understand why some people wanted to let it go. I wasn't insensitive to that. But I also thought it wasn't a South African story. I thought it was a global story, one that we should all learn from, because there are many learnings and many messages. So, yes, armed with an aeroplane ticket and a rucksack and a great deal of tenacity, I went wandering around what is the Wild Coast, the former Transkei, and then wandering around the fields near Nabeja. And I started to try and piece together what I thought was a better, fuller truth of this monumental story.
Yeah. I want to just take a quick pause here, Prof, and then we'll come back on the other side and continue our conversation. We are with Prof. Nicholas, the author of In Search of Nongqawuse, as we unpack the legacy of this young 15-year-old orphaned prophetess from really the late 1900s, 1856. We'll come back and continue our conversation.
Join us this Tuesday evening at 7:30 for the latest series of SAFTA award-winning reality show, The Tastemaster SA.
Today's theme is all about bread. I love making bread. I am shaking my boots. What a page. We got this, we got this. Oh, that didn't sound convincing. I'm feeling a little stressed. I'm not going to mess this one up.
That's The Tastemaster SA. Tuesdays at 7:30, repeats Sundays at 4. Only on SABC2.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga.
We're in conversation with Dr. Treve Nicholas. He authored In Search of Nongqawuse. I spent quite a significant amount of time in South Africa, particularly in the Eastern Cape, and came across the story of this young prophetess. And after much research and tracking her roots and her journey, the book In Search of Nongqawuse went on to be published. You bring up, Doc, you bring up, wanting to also understand what ancestors meant to amaXhosa. And what was some of your sort of unpacking or understanding as you went about this journey, and particularly what this particular ancestor means or maybe does not mean to amaXhosa people? Because I don't know if it is a story that lives in the consciousness of the Xhosa people as a collective.
Thank you. You absolutely hit the nail on the head. As you can tell, I'm an English guy. I come from the UK in Cornwall, and we don't talk about or have a strong relationship with our ancestors. But when I was down at the Ngqaba River trying to understand Nongqawuse, it was absolutely clear to me that unless I understood ancestors, I didn't stand a cat in hell's chance of getting under the skin of the story. And so I was fortunate. I went off for a weekend to a place called Enkelweni near Ugi in the Transkei. And I spent a weekend with amaXhosa. And there I really began to understand, even in the 21st century, the importance of ancestors, how it could influence people's decisions. And that made a huge difference to my understanding of how these events could have happened and how the notion that people would make decisions based on what the ancestors were saying would have made a great deal of sense in 1856, particularly when they were under a lot of stress. But the second point you make, Bridget, I think is how do people reflect on Nongqawuse today? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah.
Yes. That is such an interesting question. And I have to say, I find a huge, diverse range of opinions. The common one, which I find difficult to stomach, but I can understand. The usual one is, oh, that stupid girl. Oh, no, just go away. Leave us alone. That's sort of, let's forget about it.
Yeah.
There's other people who say, all right, I know something about it, but I don't really understand. And then there's a whole range of people that do know something, but they have a range of very diverse views and opinions about what really happened. And some of them don't seem to be based on what I would call facts or historical information.
Yeah.
So it's really diverse. But one thing is absolutely clear: it is still a hugely sensitive subject in Xhosa culture, and I've tried my level best to treat it sensitively, to tread carefully, and be mindful of the issues that are important to Amaxhosa.
For me, as you're talking, I'm thinking, I guess it would be, it's always fascinating when one is sort of bringing to light these stories of a bygone time, right? Because to some degree, it's like broken telephone, like you say. As the years go on, stories find different interpretations, different renditions, and it becomes difficult to distinguish what is fact and true from what has now become sort of fictitious folk.
So one thing I've tried to do in the book is I've tried to provide a broad range of views and opinions about what could have happened. So I've tried not to be prescriptive. I've not dismissed all the different theories. I've tried to lay out what the different options are. I have, in the end, stated what I thought happened.
Yeah.
But I've tried to be respectful to the fact that there's a broad range of opinions, some of which seem difficult to believe and accept. But I can see, as you mentioned, how they've perhaps been passed down. They become part of folklore, and they become sort of written in history almost. When you look at the actual facts, they're difficult to sustain. I mean, one of the big theories is that Sir George Grey, the governor of the Cape, personally went to the Ngqaha River and spoke to Nonqawuse and persuaded her to have the visions. Now, a lot of people believe that's quite possible. There's another view which is prevalent, which is the reason the cattle killing failed was because of the unbelievers. If only more people had believed, if only more people had sacrificed their cattle and their corn, then maybe the ancestors would have returned with fresh cattle and driven the Europeans into the sea. That view I've heard from young people in the Eastern Cape today.
Sure, fascinating indeed. Dr. Treve, that's all the time we've got today, but I mean, I think you've opened up a different layer to this conversation, and definitely a name that has crossed our show once or twice in the last 12 months or so, and each time it becomes even more fascinating to learn more and more about this young prophetess. That was Dr. Treve Nicholas, author of In Search of Nonqawuse. If you sparked your curiosity as you listen, perhaps you can also, if you come across some stuff on Google or some other written material, you can share with us on the show. And let's see if we can continue to add more and more layers to this legacy. That is where we leave it today. Ashraf is coming through. I'm sure there's so much on the news circuit today. We're tracking, of course, President Ramaphosa and that anticipated sit-down with the U.S. President Donald Trump. Lots of opinions and views on that particular discussion, as well as other things that are going on. I see Uncle Gwedi is busy just giving a press briefing right now around the mining industry and some of the developments that are happening there. Yeah, the parents have left the house. Mom and dad are away, and we left with Uncle Gwedi to take care of the fort. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day. Thank you so much for being a part of the show.
This May, SAFM celebrates Africa Month with you as we honor the legacy of the Organization of African Unity. We bring you rich conversations and stories that shape the continent. Join us as we celebrate African pride, unity, and progress. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
Top stories at 3. Gauteng Department of Education reacts to the arrest of schoolgirls accused of bullying and a call for thorough investigation on the death of an Eastern Cape 3-year-old. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good day. The Gauteng Department of Education says the arrest of 7 girls accused of assaulting a girl learner from Bedford View High School should serve as a deterrent to other bullies. The learners from Bedford View High, Kensington High School, Queen's High School and Phoenix College were arrested after a video showing the group of girls attacking the victim went viral on social media. The department says the 7 accused have been suspended and are expected to make their second appearance in the Johannesburg Magistrates Court tomorrow. They each face a charge of common assault. The department spokesperson, Steve Mabona, says psychosocial support is being provided to the victim and the perpetrators.
We have started with the process of supporting the victim, and we can confirm that she is now back at school because we started with that psycho support. But also, you don't need to ignore the perpetrators because you also need to go closer to them and give the necessary support because these are children and we are developmental institutions. We don't focus on curriculum only. We also assist in terms of nurturing, these children.
The Eastern Cape Social Development MEC Buki Wefanta has called for a thorough investigation after the death of a 3-year-old girl in Mbizana. A 32-year-old woman has been arrested in connection with her daughter's death. Police say the woman left her toddler unattended at home in Mzamba on Sunday while she visited her boyfriend. Upon her return the following day, she claimed to have found the child unresponsive. It's alleged that suspect placed the child's body in a suitcase and transported it via taxi from Mzamba to Mbizana police station, where she reported the death. The department spokesperson Mpumzi Zuzile says they are shocked about the incident.
It is devastating to learn that this tragedy may have been preventable. Our hearts go out to the family and all those impacted by this tragedy. MEC emphasized that the well-being of children must always be a priority. The MEC called for a thorough investigation into the circumstances surrounding the child's death and urged relevant authorities to take all necessary action to support families facing difficulties.
Action SA insists that it is completely against any possible tax increases that Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana may try to propose when he tables the 2025 budget tomorrow. It will be Godongwana's third attempt to table this year's budget. Action SA's parliamentary leader Ethel Trollip says they need to see government delivering basic services within its available financial resources.
Really interested to see what Budget 3.0 will look like. We haven't been consulted by the Finance Minister, but we're not a member of the GNU, so